There's no official job description for a mentor, and there's no script for how a single introduction can change someone's entire career. But this episode of the Design Build Delivers podcast, brought to you by US CAD and Archon's company, is living proof it actually does happen. I am Erin Looney, mostly fully recovered from my surprise vacation with kidney stones, but you can probably still sense a little pitifulness in this interview. Luckily, our guests make up for it. This month, we are joined by Bill Hasbrook, a DBIA Fellow, 2023 Brunelleschi Award winner, and global design build veteran with over 40 years of experience delivering projects across nearly every industry. These days, he's channeling that expertise into mentoring and championing the next generation. We also meet the next generation. Lola Preseren, a senior at Kent State University, took a leap of faith by showing up to a DBIA conference to volunteer as the only person from her school, completely alone. I don't know about you, but when I was in college, there is no way in hell I would have done that. Thankfully, Lola is braver, and what she found was a mentor, a growing career, and a future shaped by design build. Their story starts with a conversation at a table, but it's everything that came after that makes this episode one truly worth listening to, whether you're interested in mentoring or looking for your own origin story. Bill, you've had a long and celebrated career in the industry broadly and in design build. You are a Brunelleschi Award winner, 2023, and we had a really great conversation then about your background and some of those international stories, some of those early day stories of how you got into this. And, you know, being a Brunelleschi Award winner is about as big as it gets in the DBIA world. What drew you, this sort of big shot that you are now, what drew you to working with students, and why is it such an important focus for you now?
My exposure to design build dates all the way back to the early 80s. And back then in the market I was in, it was called EPC, or Engineer, Procure, Construct. We hadn't heard the term design build yet. And interestingly enough, though, we were doing what is now called progressive design build in the commercial industry, but we just didn't have a specific name for it. It was simply the way we delivered projects. I'm not sure if you can call my career celebrated, but it definitely has been long, and I've seen a lot of changes in design build, and all for the better. So forward from that beginning to 1993, even during that humble beginning of DBIA, we knew there had to be a focus on students in order to perpetuate the future of the delivery method. At the time, it was believed that most young folks begin to solidify an overall idea in middle school of what they wanted to be when they grew up. So we realized a focus starting there made sense, and naturally continuing through high school and college. So working with students of multiple ages to educate them on the benefits of this new delivery method, even though it's been around for thousands of years, it made perfect sense. I even taught how the concept applied in Boy Scouts while counseling on merit badges, and while not always directly applicable to the requirements of that merit badge for these young folks, I never hesitated to introduce the concept of how it relates and at least give some exposure to these young minds on what the future is going to hold. So now, some 32 years since then, and I consider working with students as even more important. When we look at the recent FMI study, it forecasted by 2028, alternate project delivery will amount to 89% of the market spend. That's huge, just huge. This makes it even more imperative to equip our next generation of engineers, architects, owners, contractors, and other stakeholders with how to deliver design build projects correctly, or as we say, design build done right. I've got to tell you, there are some incredibly brilliant and talented young folks out there like Lola. And we as an industry and delivery method owe it to them to get the most out of what design build has to offer. Our future simply depends on them. So that's why it's even more of a critical focus on students today.
I've got to say, I am so glad that my career path was not solidified when I was in middle school. I thought I was going to be the starting shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Don't think that would have happened. But it gives me hope that young people are having more rational dreams than I was. Another question for you, Bill, and then of course we'll talk to you, Lola, about where you are. DBIA has historically had a formal mentorship program, but what we're talking about today is it's a little bit different. It's more like not your typical sort of scheduled Zooms and that kind of thing. This is more real world moments. And you are also, in addition to a Brunelleschi winner, you are a DBIA Fellow. And by the way, DBIA is accepting nominations for this year's class of fellows. That is something you can find out at dbia.org.
Great plug. I appreciate that.
Yeah, got to get the next generation of you in there. But can you walk us now through what this fellow student mentorship or the shadowing looks like?
Well, first of all, in order to be part of the DBIA mentoring program overall, you have to hold the DBI credential and be in good standing. And to be a fellow, you have to have held your DBIA certification continuously for at least 10 years, held continuous membership within DBIA for at least 10 years. And by the way, a lot of people don't realize this, but you don't have to be a DBIA member to hold the certification. And finally, be able to prove at least 10 years of responsible charge of design build experience gained while you were DBIA certified. You also have to be able to describe the extent to which you support and promote DBIA's mission, values, and positions, as well as the merits of design build project delivery at both the national and regional levels through involvement on boards and committees and engagement with academia, university, and students. So aside from all the benefits of an ongoing mentoring experience with just a DBIA certified professional, the Shadow program offers a real-time face-to-face interaction at the annual conference with a DBIA Fellow. So the student simply shadows a fellow to open networking doors by attending annual conference events such as the opening party, receptions, expo hall lunches, award program receptions, even into board and committee meetings. The exposure to that sort of networking in that sort of environment is unprecedented and exceptional. And I'm told that every shadow in last year's conference got at least an interview, if not an offer for interning and or employment. And Lola was volunteering at the conference and got involved in the shadow process and got introduced to other fellows, board members, and industry leaders.
As they say, Lola, there are three sides to every story. There is one person's side, there's the other person's side, and then there's the truth. So let's get your perspective now. We'll rewind a little bit, and can you talk to us about back when you met Bill and how this mentorship started for you?
Coming into the DBIA conference, I had no intentions of, or no idea that I would meet Bill. I had gone to the conference in DC the previous year, and I'd met a wonderful woman named Tracy Paulson. And we just gained a great relationship. We kept in touch after the conference, and she's like, "Lola, are you coming back?" And I was like, "I don't know." So she reached out to the DBIA representatives in Ohio, and they sponsored part of my travel. And then my student organization had also sponsored part of my travel to Dallas. She's like, "Oh, there's so many great people. Let me know if you want to meet anyone." So as they're doing the introduction for the student volunteers, Bill had taken time out of his day to come and talk to all of us. And I was like, well, he's an important person. So if he's taking time out of his day to come talk to us, I would love to have a conversation with him. Just thank him, see how he's gotten to where he is in his career. And as I'm entering my career, I want the little inside scoop. I would really like to be successful and impact a lot of people's lives. So I went to Tracy. I was like, I want to talk to Bill Hasbrook. And she's like, "I'll make something happen." So Bill and I ended up speaking at a little table in the middle of the conference center in between sessions. And there we had great conversations. I feel like the conversation just flowed very naturally and nothing was really forced. I met a few people that he introduced me to that were also in the industry, and the doors just started to open from there. So coming into this conference, I did have no expectations, and my reality completely surpassed anything that I could have imagined.
Bill's respected, very respected, but Tracy outranks everyone. Love Tracy.
She's a superstar.
Yes, she is. So much so that she just won a national award. She won a Stevie Award from American Business Awards this year for the kind of things she does. And it's things like what you were just saying, in addition to what she does at the office that make her, she's a good person to know.
I'll have to text her.
Yeah,
Congratulate
definitely.
her about that.
Definitely keep in touch. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've talked about relationships with Tracy, with Bill, and normally, you think of the word relationship, you think of what that looks like and you define it, but they really don't follow a script in reality. You touched on this a little bit with how your relationship evolved with Bill, and it sounds like the answer to this question, was it casual at first, is that it kind of was. But did you move from these casual conversations into a more structured mentorship? And what kind of things were you talking about early on in your calls and emails and your communication with each other?
Coming into this trip to go be a student volunteer, I didn't know that there was a fellow program. I was the only student from my school to travel, so I really went in knowing no one, hoping that I'd run into Tracy. Our introduction was a lot more casual. After that, we had discussions about how if we'd like to continue having a mentorship and talking once a month, setting up meetings so it would be more structured. But from the beginning, it was really a personal conversation and getting to know each other, and then talking about goals, dreams, realistic and unrealistic goals and dreams. But it's really great to see how much I've grown professionally and personally just from our conversations that we have on a monthly basis. Bill's also always made it a point that I can reach out to him at any time, and I've reached out to him numerous times in between our calls, and I'm just very blessed and grateful to have him as a mentor and someone to talk to about things not just work related but personally, because I'm one to believe that you don't seek, you attract. In that time, of course, I would always love for people to come into my life that I wasn't expecting to better my life in ways that I couldn't imagine and guide me in paths that I have not seen within myself. And that's what I feel Bill has helped me do, especially with the connections that I've made.
Well, Lola, you have had quite the ride within this time that you've been working with Bill, and maybe even before that. Multiple interviews, some written offers, big name connections. That's a lot of traction in a pretty short time. What do you think made this experience so impactful for you in terms of being able to open those doors and be able to walk into them beyond just networking, which is the easy answer usually?
So I have never wanted to stay in Ohio. So any opportunity I had to go anywhere, meet new people, meet people in the industry, I jumped the gun on it.
We'll make sure our Ohio Valley region doesn't know you said that.
We have an amazing career fair. We have about, I think, 80 companies that come in the fall and 60 that come in the spring, and they're all looking for interns in Ohio. And there are the big name companies there, and you're able to make those interpersonal connections. But coming into this conference and meeting people from all over the country with all different perspectives of the industry, the way of living, and just experiences because of the culture that they're in, it's really impactful, and it's very eye-opening to see the differences in that. And then being able to talk about the different challenges that people face in different climates or different states, and it's some things you wouldn't ever think of. So it's really nice to hear about that. And as I am searching to go places around the country, go places around the world, just being at that conference and being around so many intelligent people that are always willing to share their story and have conversations with you if you show interest in having those conversations, because everybody loves to talk about what they love, and the common interest of everyone there is construction, specifically design build. And I really like to say I want to be a sponge and absorb as much information as possible. So any chance I had to pick someone's brain, I kind of jumped on it. And I've had conversations just with random people as I was checking them in, or I was eating lunch talking to someone and they've given me a job offer on the spot. So that was really cool to experience, but it's just gaining a wide variety of knowledge and just honestly just learning, because I never think you can learn enough information about anything or anyone.
That is fair. It's a very good point. And I'm thinking, man, have you set the bar high? Yeah, I got a job offer over lunch. Everyone's going to expect that now. And I'm happy I'm happy to hear that. I think it's great to hear that kind of stuff. It really does happen. Are you interested in sustainable design and construction practices but concerned about profitability? USCAD, an Archon's company, helps forward-thinking ENR top-ranked AEC firms in mitigating risk and driving profit through digitalization using Autodesk AEC technology. To learn more, contact uscad.com/DBIA for a free 30-minute consultation. That's uscad.com/DBIA. Bill, let's go back to you for a minute. You're a bit of a ham, a very intelligent ham. Admittedly, on a personal level, really look forward to seeing you at conferences because you're just a great person to talk to. You're
very, very kind.
You're a hell of a storyteller, and you're a fount of interesting knowledge and anecdotes. And I say all this with deep affection.
Years back, we had a president from Texas named LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. And whether you liked him or not, I love one of his quotes. And it was, never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yes. Well, hopefully you only subscribe to that in some settings, because as a mentor, you maybe don't want to do that as much. So what is your approach when you're mentoring a student like Lola? Do you see yourself more as a connector, as a coach, a sounding board, all of the above?
First of all, I think both folks need to feel comfortable with each other. And as Lola mentioned a minute ago, and I totally agree with this, we had an immediate connection and felt comfortable just talking. From my standpoint, it was like we've known each other for quite a while. And it's not unlike what makes design build successful. There needs to be a foundation of trust and an agreement that we both have the same goals in mind. So in this case, the top two items for me are I need to be there to answer any questions. And as you suggest, be a sounding board for all sorts of things related to schooling and careers, and open doors to help get an internship or a job offer. But in many instances, also be there as a friend and see what's happening in their life, where I might be able to give another perspective or contribute on that too, because there needs to be a great life-work combination. So they really go hand in hand. Students today have so much more stress and things competing for their time and money, both career-wise as well as socially and in school, than my generation ever could have conceived or ever had. It can many times, from my point of view, be very overwhelming to make heads or tails of it all. Lola, though, who was doing very well school and career-wise on her own, I mean, like you said, got a job offer just sitting at a table. It was really more of making introductions, opening doors, and then being part of the thought process as opportunities arose. And that included everything from prioritizing which opportunities to pursue, as well as how you negotiate through a formal job offer to ensure, as we say in the competitive industry, that you don't leave any money or benefits on the table. I also break the mentoring process into two distinct parts, mentoring and championing. So championing is where your mentor, or now your champion, makes industry and professional introductions by saying things like, "Hey, Nina, I have someone you really need to meet, as I think she'd be an incredible asset to your team." As an example, one company I introduced Lola to agreed to look at her resume based solely on my relationship with their president, as they weren't advertising for any positions that Lola was interested in. The door was open just through that relationship, but the rest was up to Lola. I can't impact that at all. And she not only went through the interview process, but ended up with a hard written job offer. Those are the sorts of things that a champion does above and beyond just mentoring an individual. And it doesn't end with a student getting that first job. I believe that mentoring champion hybrid model is a valuable resource as the student continues along their career path, becoming a a practitioner on their own.
When you talk about what your mentorship looks like, and this is true of other people within the DBIA world, that it's such an active back and forth, it's a give and take. Because the word networking, Lola, you may agree or you may disagree, but the first time you hear that word, you're like, please don't make me go in a room and start shaking hands with people and trying to be like, hi, I'm so wonderful. It is it's icky for a lot of people, Bill. It's really powerful to have somebody like you in your corner, not just because of who you are in the industry, but because you are really empathetic. You bring that angle, you bring the humanity. And I think, judging by what you guys are saying, you make that idea of networking far less transactional. And that is really, really powerful. So why do you think that personal connection can make such a huge difference for students when they're breaking into the field?
So I want to make a plug for Dr. Barb Jackson. One thing we did last year during our student mixer was Barb came in and in advance of shadowing and networking gave the students tips on how to network, because it may not come natural to all of us. And instead of just throwing people out there and saying, well, sink or swim, I hope you do well in your networking efforts, she actually gave some tips, which I think paid huge dividends, as that whole group of folks, whether a shadow or not, prepared to go out and network. So I'm going to talk to Dr. Jackson again and see if she might be able to come and give these students a benefit of her thoughts. So back to your question, though, Dr. Looney, in spite of all the virtual platforms, social media and the like, I still firmly believe that people do business with people. Maybe old-fashioned, but I still wholeheartedly believe it. I just gave an example of how the mentoring relationship evolving from one of mentor-mentee to one of champion-practitioner can pay big dividends and open doors. I think it's a vital relationship that needs to be maintained for anybody interested in pursuing a career of ever-increasing responsibility, if that's your goal. Also, as I just described, a mentor or champion can often open doors based on their relationship where otherwise there may not be a door to open. They would have never known that star performer even existed and ultimately would have missed an opportunity to bring them onto their team. Companies many times in this regard will invest in the future and make positions for these stellar professionals. Personal recommendation goes a long way, as it's also the champion's mentor's reputation at stake too. They would never knowingly recommend someone that wasn't top-notch or a good fit for their company. That would reflect poorly on them and possibly tarnish their own professional and personal relationship with the prospective hiring company. So I think it all gets back to relationships built on trust. The prospective employer trusts the opinions of the mentor champion and values their opinion and insight. And that, folks, I got to tell you, opens doors. But I'll let you in on a little secret. I get as much or more out of these relationships myself. It's really an incredibly beneficial two-way street, and I just love being part of it.
That's such a refreshing thing to think about. You are still as deep into your career as you are. This keeps you on top of what's coming next. You do not become obsolete. I'm not saying you're anywhere near obsolete. But if you don't connect with people you're going to be working with, this is one of the reasons I continue to teach, because if you gave me 2 resumes to hire, say, a reporter, those reels and resumes are going to look very similar. But what sets them apart is somebody who has taken the time to get to know them and know what kind of fit they're going to be and what kind of person they're going to be. So that recommendation would go a long way. But it also keeps that person who made the recommendation in the conversation as someone who is a valuable resource in the future. So now we're going to flip this a little bit and talk to you, Lola, because you're sitting there quietly listening to the back and forth of the old people. DBIA puts a strong emphasis on developing that next generation that we've been talking about of design build leaders. As you may know, student membership is just $45, which makes it one of the best deals out there. And Bill, you mentioned earlier, you don't have to be a member to be certified, but we kind of like you to do both. But Lola, from your perspective, what makes the student experience at DBIA meaningful or unique?
I think that the student experience is very unique and meaningful because upon arriving there and meeting everyone, you're just thrown into a room And as I've gone on my own, I'm like, okay, I'm not just going to sit here in silence. So you're forced to go out of your way to talk to people, which I do find is a big challenge for a lot of people within my generation because of social media. That off the bat can be more difficult for others, but everyone has the same thing in common. It's construction. So you ask them, oh, where are you from? What college do you go to? The thing that I feel every student volunteer or every fellow could take away is the opportunity that they have right in front of them. Being in a conference center full of industry professionals or being paired up with someone incredibly successful in the industry, as long as you ask the right questions and you're able to have that personable conversation with them, I feel like that can take you a lot further than you think you can go. And I've learned over time to never be scared of asking questions and never be scared to approach someone, because if I've never approached Bill, I would have never heard about all these opportunities and never would have heard about all these people that he's known. You just don't know what you're walking into until you take the steps to the front door. And as soon as it opens, it could be a world of extraordinary things that you had no clue you were capable of entertaining the idea of certain jobs or certain connections. And it's a whole picture in front of you now instead of a blank slate.
And it takes just a little bit of the pain out of everyone's favorite thing to do. I think there are still surveys out there that say the two most heinous things that human beings do are look for a job and buy a car. And so it takes some of the pain out of that job hunt because you have someone you can say, is it me or is this really overwhelming? And that person can kind of bring you back to center. And you mentioned about the setting of the conference itself a couple times, and we're going to talk about that here just a little bit. Conferences can be, like you've sort of mentioned, a little overwhelming, especially if you're not sure what to expect. Packed schedules. We've got a bunch of people with their names and their fancy titles and their ribbons. What advice would you give to other students who might be interested in coming to a DBIA conference and might be a little nervous about networking or kind of unsure how to take advantage of these sort of events?
So, some advice that I should take myself that I don't even arriving into these events, because it is very overwhelming to go. And since I traveled alone, I knew absolutely no one. And before I saw Tracy, I called my best friend. I was like, Caitlin, what did I get myself into? Why am I here? She's like, Lola, you're fine. Just go talk to someone. You're there to talk to people. At the end of the day, I took a step back and I was like, everyone here is human. We all come here from different backgrounds. This person knows absolutely nothing about me. So if I mess up in a conversation or make it really awkward, I can just walk away and they'll never remember my face again. Or if it goes really well, then the conversation will carry and then you build that connection. You make that connection on LinkedIn. You get their email, you get their phone number. But you are your biggest enemy when you're scared to go talk to someone because you don't know what could be on the other side of that conversation. I do believe communication is one of the biggest things in our world, in our industry, and gaining the confidence to start those conversations is only going to take you further.
I'm just imagining you walking up to somebody and having a quick introduction and they say something super weird and you just turn around and walk away. You're right. You don't ever have to see those people again. But you also, because everyone there is there for similar reasons, it might be helpful to tell yourself, which this helps me, is to say, we've all been there before. We've all done that dumb thing. We've all been alone at a conference. We've all walked into a room where we knew absolutely no one and felt like everybody else was best friends. And if you know the similarities in the experiences, that can sometimes make it a lot easier. And it sounds like that's what you were saying.
And to add to that too, as you're walking around, everybody has a name tag. It says the kind of contractor that someone works for or what profession they're in. So if you scan that as you go by and think about in your head, you can ask a more specific question. But being a student, you have something that says student on your badge. You look fairly younger than a lot of the industry professionals there. And it's expected to make mistakes or be awkward in a conversation because you're so new and you're so green to the industry. And I've honestly gotten a lot of comments about how brave or bold it is of me to walk up to someone, have a conversation, just because it's not common anymore. I just like to build relationships and just learn and grow. It's scary at first, but I've had very few and very little bad outcomes of conversations.
That's a good thing to hear, because I was thinking we needed to start hunting down the people who made you feel weird. So back to you now, Bill. What do you want your fellow fellows, which is, by the way, really awkward to say, the other fellows, what would you want them to know about the impact they might be able to have by saying to someone like Lola, let me introduce you to this person?
As verbose as I usually am, I'm going to sum this up in just a couple of simple lines. First of all, Lola, it's been an incredible treat to have you come into my life. While we've only known each other for 6 months, I feel like I've known you forever. And this gets back to what we discussed earlier about just feeling comfortable with each other. She's a superstar. I can't wait to follow and be a small part of her future successes. And she makes me feel very confident that our future is in good hands. So what I would say to my fellow fellows and other possible mentors is, don't cheat yourself out of those same feelings. Take advantage of it. As I already said, I think I get as much or more out of it than Lola and the other people I mentor do. What a blessing to be able to share the outcome of the positive things that came out of those mistakes early in our career with the future. To be able to be a part of actually molding the future leaders in our industry and within our delivery method. So if you're not part of the Fellow Shadow program or a mentor overall, you're not only cheating future leaders, but I think you're cheating yourself.
That was actually summed up very nicely. I'm going to turn back to you, Lola. You've had this experience now as being mentored by somebody who is very respected in the field. And, believe it or not, we do have a lot of other people who are maybe as cool as Bill. Maybe. Can't guarantee, but they're close. But now that you've had this experience and you're getting ready to move into your career at full force, where, first of all, do you hope to be in a few years? And do you see yourself paying forward this type of mentorship and guidance in the future?
In a few years, I'm hoping that I'll be full-time employed. My goals in my career, they've been very hyper-focused. And then as I've gotten older and I've had more conversations with Bill and other people in the industry, I've made them less hyper-focused to being, I'm going to build something that is going to help out a tremendous amount of people, and I'm doing it for the better good of everybody around, because our buildings allow us to have dry enclosed areas, and I have been really taking a step back and looking at the little things in life to find myself grateful for. So even the smallest things on a job that might seem tedious, it's something that I am excited for, because it's all a part to build the bigger picture. Do I hope to engage or help out students in the future? I would love to be a mentor for someone, just because of all the conversations that I've had with Bill and other people in the industry or in high school, the teachers that I looked up to that helped me get through times. Because seeing myself in times where I've struggled a lot and I thought that, oh, it's not going to get better, and talking to someone that's been in the situation, it's just really nice to have a conversation and have someone help guide you through the path of life that you're encountering and enduring. And they can only give you their best advice, especially on things that they haven't done themselves. But getting someone in the industry that you're in as well, it really creates a better, more clear picture for you. I've taken away a lot of great things from talking to Bill and the people I've met within DBIA, and being able to pay it forward and help other people, just like my goal is for building to pay it forward. It would be very heartwarming, and my grandma was one of the most selfless people. She was always one to go out of her way to make sure that everyone was okay before she took care of herself. And since she has passed, that's something that I have told myself that I want to be like as I grow.
And maybe you can tell some poor misguided kid like me when they're in middle school that they will not start at shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they should probably think of something else. Okay, to be fair, it is someone's destiny every couple years to play short for the Bucks. It just wasn't mine. I'm not even a Pirates fan. If you're interested, though, in realistic mentoring on either side of the relationship, learn more about how you can get involved with DBIA in several ways that can funnel into mentorship on either side of the equation at dbia.org/get-involved. Thank you to our guests, Bill Hasbrook and Lola Preseren, for bringing to life this one example of how the mentor-mentee relationship betters design build and the AEC industry. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Fred Yee, and thanks to you, our listeners, for being such an important part of the DBIA community. Design Build Delivers is brought to you by US CAD and Archon's company. To learn more, visit uscad.com/DBIA. Until next time, keep building what's next, and don't forget to open that door for someone else.